Alrighty, welcome into episode 2 of Ryan and Megan. Of course, we are Ryan and Megan, and we're two traveling physical therapists who have been traveling since 2020. And now, what's unique about us is we travel with our family. So we have a 1.5-year-old and 1 day away. Literally, we have a C-section on Friday.
Which is 2 days away?
2 days away, and then we'll be a traveling family of 4. We do live a little bit of a hybrid lifestyle, live part of the year at home. That's where we're recording here. And then the other half of the year, we take travel contracts as travel physical therapists. In today's episode, what we are going to be discussing is the logistics of travel healthcare.
Before we hop into the logistics that you got to consider leaving us a review with lots and lots of stars wherever you listen, if you would, just because we are starting this new podcast and it'll help us kind of get it out.
Yeah. And if you're watching on YouTube, consider subscribing, hit that like button. All of the reviews, the likes, the subscribes helps the algorithm send our videos out to more travel healthcare professionals. And we can't thank you enough if you would do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So today we said we're talking about the logistics of traveling in healthcare and as a family, because that's where we're at and we're putting our spin on it.
Right. And we started out by when we were drawing up the outline for this week's episode, we started with pros and cons. Mm-hmm. And we really were hitting on the logistics being in the cons section because I think they're a pain in the butt. I mean, that's what it is. Yeah. It's like,
yeah, you really don't like a lot of these things that we have on here.
Yes, I love travel. I hate the logistics of it, the paperwork, all of that. Mm-hmm. And so we're really going to kind of dive into those.
But it's also, I think we wanted to list them out just to get your minds jogging on what there is to think about. Because we talked about last week considering traveling with a family and taking the time to actually work through some of those things. So today is kind of like putting a few of those out there that would be good to think through.
Right. What do you have to consider before you become a traveler?
And I don't think we'll go into complete depth with all of these. I think we're going to be like brushing these topics and coming back and going into depth with how we handle it and what's worked and what doesn't.
Right. So the first one, my least favorite, we'll start with that first. Yeah. And that is just the paperwork of travel. So that includes all the paperwork you got to turn in to get a license in the state that you're going to practice in. So if you're going to Montana, you need a Montana physical therapy license for us. And so there's different paperwork you have to fill out. Now, I will say, at least for the physical therapy profession, the PT Compact has been huge at eliminating some of that paperwork.
Mm-hmm. The Compact is basically, if you live in a state that participates in the Compact, and that's like where your home license is, then you can essentially go buy privileges to any other state, usually for somewhere between like $25 to $50, and have it the same day. Like,
right. It's a whole lot. It's a whole lot quicker.
Compare that to maybe $125 fee for putting in an application, plus all the paperwork that you have to do, plus the waiting for it all to process. The Compact is really, really great. So I think nurses have a Compact. I don't know about OT.
I don't know about the other professions. I know nurses do have a Compact. So that makes a big difference on getting that licensure. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when we get privileges with the Compact, we do not have to send in verification of our license of the other states that we've had in the past. See, that's where
it's all linked to your home state.
That's where a lot of the paperwork would come from, because we would go get a license in a state, and then every state license that we had previously, we would have to talk to their
verification
board, and their board would have to send over to this to verify our license. And if you've traveled to a few states, you're sending out a lot of paperwork.
Yeah. We're really excited because Hawaii has started the process of getting the legislation going. And that is actually one state that you had to kind of be strategic about.
Yeah, strategic traveling too.
Yeah, you had to be kind of strategic about Hawaii, because if you got a license to Hawaii and you went and worked there, and then you need to come back to the mainland and wanted to work, in one of the 48 states, it always took a really long time to get the Hawaii license to verify that you held one. So people would put off going to Hawaii until they were done traveling. And we were like, well, I guess we're never going because I don't know if we're ever going to stop traveling. So,
right. So
we're excited.
Yeah. If they get privileges, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah. So paperwork, that's a logistic.
Right. I think resume is another one that falls under paperwork. So a little bit different than a permanent job. You have to constantly be updating your resume because you're applying for jobs every 3 to 6 months, which isn't horrible, but, that's more you have to do.
Yeah. And then another paperwork thing that you want to keep track of too is your shots and medical type things, because when you do take an extra or your next contract, you usually have to get those things updated. And every company and every contract, they're going to want to know what you are up to date on and what you need. So you want to keep all that.
Right. All your shots record, when did you do your last TB test? For a while now, it's been N95 mask fitting, having that up to date, a physical every year.
Yes.
So you want to keep all that paperwork so you're not constantly repeating that. And then if you switch travel companies, unfortunately, sometimes they take your stuff. Sometimes they want you to go redo it. Again, those are kind of the nitty gritty logistics you got to kind of slog through.
That's the one that Ryan really hates.
I know. I've went and gave blood for that TB test so many times. If you're a traveler out there, you've probably related to me, but oh my gosh, I don't know how many times I've been stuck in 1 year just to get a renew a TB test.
Yeah.
All right. Some other things.
I think that was pretty good on the paperwork as far as resumes, your medical stuff. Licensure.
Info to the travel company. Sometimes each travel company is a little different. Sometimes they want, your skills report, your checklist. Sometimes they want competency test. So that all adds up. Nothing too hard. You guys can do it.
Yeah.
You are professionals. But if you don't like paperwork like me, it's a headache.
Okay, so another logistic you should consider is doctor's appointments for yourself and for your family. And this really matters when you are with young children, especially we are about to just have another kid. And that comes with lots and lots and lots of doctor's appointments, every month, every 3 months, all that stuff. So you want to know the doctor's visit schedule for your newborn if you're in that stage, so that you can kind of plan, we need to be around this area at this time, and figure out if you can even take a travel contract or if you can take one far away or if you need to be close. And then outside of infants, you got to take care of yourself. So,
right. And I think it was easier when it was just us traveling as a couple, because we go to the eye doctor, the dentist, and our physical checkup once a year.
And
so
and you get the physical once a year because you're doing it for work anyway.
Right. And we would do that when we would come back home to our tax home. So we were in town for a few days. We'd knock it all out. And then really, since we're young, we're healthy, we didn't use the healthcare system that much. With kids, that has amplified dramatically. So there's a lot more planning. But if you're someone out there that maybe needs to see the doctor regularly, this is a big logistic you need to kind of think through of, okay, when am I going for my normal checkups? Timing it out. When can I be back in my tax home? And it's not necessarily a negative, because every traveler, to get those tax-free stipends, has to be back in their tax home for at least 30 days a year. So try to plan ahead and plan your doctor's appointments while you're getting those 30 days.
And a lot of times we were able to throw doctor's appointments in to visits we had already planned back home. So usually we're back home for holidays, family reunions, random things. And we would just make sure to take a weekday off as well. So a Monday or a Friday, and have that doctor's visit scheduled well in advance so that we could get those things covered. And just all done at once.
And if you're traveling with kids, I know Megan kind of hit on this, but I think that's where we get our 6 months after childbirth. We like to try to stay near home because there is so many infant checkups with their pediatrician in that 6 months. Then after that 6 months, there's still more, but it lessens, it spreads out. So something to consider.
Yes.
The next thing I think is a big logistic for travelers is finding housing at the travel assignment.
Yes.
So that can be a pretty daunting task, especially if you're going somewhere that's relatively popular and not very much housing. Because, well, some of your housing options are like an RV. That's how we like to travel. But you're still trying to find an RV park that will take you and will let you stay there for an extended period of time.
And if you're trying to get into that RV world, you got to be mindful of how old your RV is, because sometimes places won't let you park unless you're like 10 years young.
Yeah, they have a 10-year rule. So sometimes, a lot of times we notice this on the West Coast.
Yeah.
They want your RV only 10 years old. Yeah, they want it newer. Most of the time, they can't look at your RV and tell you what year it is. They just don't want a dingy RV rolling in.
We did run into that a couple times when we were still living in Big Betty and we were parking it, somewhere full time. I think one of the parks we parked at was a KOA, which is a nicer resort, and they had that rule, but we were able to say we're professionals, we're working full time, we're living in this full time. It's all redone on the inside, and they waived that rule for us.
Yeah, I think they asked for pictures. I think we sent them pictures of our RV. So again, they just don't want a dingy RV, but you got to make sure that the RV park allows for extended stays, monthly stays. Sometimes campgrounds, if you're trying to do the campground thing, they might only let you stay there 7 to 14 days. So you got to think through those logistics for the RV park.
Got to figure out the RV situation. You could also be looking for housing like an apartment or like an Airbnb rental. But there are some places where cost of living is just really, really high. And you might have a really good paying travel contract, but part of it is because cost of living is so high. So we've also done this where we've lived in like little Airbnb apartments that people are renting out. We did this when we lived like close to Seattle. We tried renting out someone else's RV, which was a nightmare.
Yeah, that was
Don't
bad.
do that. And then we moved to like a basement apartment, but it was, I think, the most expensive housing we've ever paid for both of them.
Right. And that's just, again, cost of living in the area. Really consider that. We're kind of looking at you, California. They got high travel contracts out there,
Washington.
but usually the housing is a lot. If you're a single traveler, consider probably the cheapest option of renting a room in a house, and you're going to share probably a community space like a kitchen. But if you're working during the day, you're not really home that often, you don't mind sharing a room, that's usually the cheapest option.
Yeah.
A lot of times, one of our favorite places to go while you're finding housing is Furnished Finder. Because again, you're not going to be traveling with furniture. You're not going to be traveling with a bed. You're going to need that there.
Unless you travel with air mattresses and air couches.
You're better than us. You don't want to do that. Just you want to pack as little as possible. So we use Furnished Finder, and that's actually where we run through our service. We rent out our basement to travelers in the area, our little kind of apartment basement setup. And so we've had good success on the Furnished Finder.
Yeah. But housing as it relates to being a family, I think changes how you're going to consider it. Just because you are housing more people and you probably want it to feel comfortable and to be organized and stable. So that's why we have bought our new RV, because it's bigger and will house all of us. And we haven't traveled in it alone, just us two, full time for work with our 2 kids yet. But those are the plans we're making for our housing, just so that we can have something that is the same, that is our own space, and our kids can feel that sense of security, hopefully. So
right. When everything else is changing around them and changing around us, at least we can have the same home no matter which state we're in. And that's kind of what we liked about the RV life when it was just Megan and I living in Big Betty, our motorhome that we've now sold. But we've done it all. Like we said, we've rented basement apartments. We've rented homes, like 2-bedroom homes as when we were traveling as a family. And we kind of always keep going back to the RV thing. But you do not have to travel in an RV to be a traveler. It's not everyone's thing. Just something to
There's
consider.
a lot to learn with the whole RV situation.
And you'll probably, when you're looking for housing in the area, it'll be a stressful moment. Just take your time, give yourself deep breaths, give yourself plenty of time to find housing before you sign on the dotted line. It'll be okay. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think we should say this episode's probably going to feel maybe a little overwhelming because we're going through all the logistics and the hard decisions you have to make. But we just want it to be an overview so you know what there is to think about. There are still plenty of pros. We're definitely going to hit on them at the end before we finish out this podcast, just to remind us why it's worth it, because it is all worth it. And the reality is all of this stuff is figure outable.
It's doable, definitely.
And once you spend time thinking on it and getting a grasp of it, it becomes less scary. So
Right. That first contract and figuring out these logistics, first, second, and maybe even third contract, figuring out these logistics, it does seem a little overwhelming. Just know, okay, this is going to be overwhelming. I'm going to give myself plenty of time to figure it out. And then over time, it's like anything you practice, you get used to that kind of change and that overwhelming feeling.
yeah. So I think the next logistic kind of ties into this housing topic, but it's dual expenses. And there are some tax rules that you can review our video of. We have one on YouTube already about tax homes, but the topic is dual expenses. You have to have expenses at your tax home or your home base. And for us, that's worked out because we're doing that hybrid lifestyle. So we are home and our tax home, spending money there half the year. But then you also have your expenses when you're on the road.
Right. And the reason why the tax code wants you to have dual expenses or show dual expenses is so you can get those housing stipends and those food per diems tax-free on your travel assignment. But the only way to legally accept those is you do have to show dual expenses and maintain a tax home. Mm-hmm. So really what that means is paying for rent or mortgage in your tax home and paying for rent wherever your travel contract is at the same time.
Yeah.
And you have proof of that.
Yes.
Like a paper trail. And then you can, so getting that set up. So I guess we can kind of talk through how we did it early on and how we do it now. Early on, we rented a room from my parents' home. So Megan and I would pay my parents a
fair market price.
A fair market price. That's the key. I can't just pay my parents $50 and say, hey, I'm renting a room from you. We had to go on and look at like what are other people in the area renting a room for. We pay that to my parents. That is income they are making. So that's the other thing is they have to claim that on their taxes. So you need to have that conversation with them. And so we would pay them rent. And then that would show like, okay, we are renting a space back home, but we weren't owning a space.
No.
And then wherever we were at, staying in the RV park or renting an apartment, then that would show our other expense.
Yes. So that's what we did early on. We could, I guess, technically still do that if we didn't own a home here. Mm-hmm. But once we were pregnant with our first daughter, we decided to go ahead and buy a house because we knew we wanted to be home part-time, on the road part-time. And so now the dual expenses is just the fact that we own a home and we pay a mortgage every month. So we have proof of that, obviously, and that's on our taxes and everything. But that was something that was a little different to consider for us, as knowing that we wanted to continue traveling and we had to figure out a way to make the finances work to be able to handle a home mortgage payment and be on the road and handle whatever we were paying on the road, because you end up
consider money.
You're paying a double mortgage essentially when you're traveling. And that was part of why we chose to have a house with a basement that we could rent.
Yes. House hacking. Again, we'll have to do an episode on kind of house hacking, owning a home as a traveler, but that has worked well for us.
Mm-hmm. So if you're a family who wants to hit the road on a travel contract, you're going to have to consider, do we want to keep our house?
Right. If you already own a home.
If you already own one.
What are we going to do with our home? Is this just a trial period where we're okay with just leaving the home vacant for this 6 months to a year, just to try travel? That could be an option for people. Or are we going to rent rooms out? Are we going to rent it to family? What does that look like?
Yeah.
Now, if you're wanting us to go back to the tax home part, like how do I maintain a tax home? Tell me more about this dual expenses. I want to make sure I'm doing everything right. Really consider looking at our tax home video on YouTube. We dive in way deeper than we're going to right now. And then again, maybe later we're going to have to do just a tax home podcast so we can kind of go over that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's important logistics you want to start looking into.
What's our next one?
The other one is how often are you going to see family? So sometimes as travelers, we're like ready to go adventure. And then we forget about, we're leaving all this family behind. And so you're going to probably want to go back for certain holidays to maybe see them or visit them, depending on how close you are. So thinking up of the logistics of when am I coming back home? Mm-hmm. What am I going to do when I'm home? And I think one of the things that I had to realize, and I've said this before, when we first started traveling, when we came home and saw family, I almost expected everyone to just drop what they were doing and like throw us a party because we hadn't been there. I don't know. I thought I was so special, I guess, but it was hard. It was kind of weird to come back into life where I had been and realize, life is continuing here without me.
Yeah.
Everyone else has their own life.
The world turns, buddy.
The world turns. and that's okay. But now I'm here and I want to spend time with them, quality time that I haven't gotten since I've been away.
Yeah. And that was really a large roadblock for me being okay with traveling right outside of school. I think I actually told Ryan when we were dating before we got married, I was like, you just can't take me away from my family, okay? And then he's like, we're going to travel and we're going to do it forever.
Family is a big thing to her.
So that's why I really appreciate the whole hybrid lifestyle, because I know that we're going to be making memories at home with our kids. They're going to be in our home. They're going to be around family. And then I also know we're getting the benefits of hitting the road, making memories. And if I get homesick while we're on the road, I know that there's like an end date, and I know there's an end date to being home. And so I can kind of compartmentalize, like, this is the time to really capitalize on traveling the country with our kids and enjoy this 6 months. And I can compartmentalize that and now not really be thinking about what we're missing out on, the whole FOMO thing, because the world turns and you're always, going to see people doing stuff back home. But that's one of the huge perks of traveling, even if you're not doing a part-time travel situation, if you're like single or if you're a family or whatever and traveling full time, you get more time off during the year, essentially because of the financial benefit. So you can choose to come back and spend some of that time off at home if you wanted. So
right. I think that's the big takeaway of our situation is we have definitely used travel to mold it to what we wanted it to be and how we want our lives to run. And so for us, that was falling into this hybrid lifestyle so we could have more family time at home, while also getting the benefits of travel and adventuring for part of the year. Now, that could be very different for you as a traveler. Maybe it's, I want to see my family for holidays, but maybe you can take like a month off, be at home, and you get your fill of family and everything, and then you can go back out. And that's what's great about travel is you really can mold it to whatever you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so if you need a little more, then you lean into it. And there might be a season in life where I need a little more family. I don't need a little more family. And so you can really kind of shape it to what you want.
Another logistic you'll want to consider is just that there is going to be a lot of change with travel. And not everybody's made for it. Not everybody is used to it. But I think it's definitely something you can adapt to. I think it's something we've gotten used to. It's the only thing Reagan has ever known is a lot of change. So she's really good at dealing with it. But it is going to be constant change and not quite being sure of your future. You're not in a permanent position where you're going to be there for the next 10 years. You're looking for a new job every 3 to 6 months typically. So
right, your job is changing, your coworkers are changing, where you're living's changing, what bed you're sleeping at night can be changing, And so, everything's changing around you. And I think what helped us cope with it, or still cope with that constant change, knowing at the beginning that, hey, there is going to be a lot of change coming our way. And that's okay, because that's normal to acknowledge that. I think it's when people try to stop the change and push it off, and they're not like expecting it, that we really put up some strong walls and they have a horrible time. But I think at the beginning, if you are able to tell yourself, okay, change is going to happen, and I will just tackle it and take care of it as it comes, slowly, one at a time. It's going to happen. I'm going to maybe feel uncomfortable in some certain situations. When you can kind of say that stuff out loud, then I don't know, it seems easier to kind of go through, because you're prepared. You've prepared your mind for change is going to happen.
And I think that means having grace for yourself. If you're traveling with a spouse, having grace for your spouse to be dealing with all of the change. And my mom also always said, keep your humor about yourself. So you're going to have like highs of the experience of being in a new place, and you're going to have lows of being in a new place and figuring it all out.
All right. And then our last logistic to talk about as traveling with kids is there's definitely some things you need to consider. And so we're just going to touch on a few of them. The first one being childcare. So what are you going to do with your baby or your young toddler or your teenager when you're out there on a travel contract? Are you going to have childcare? Is a family member coming with you? Like, what are you going to do?
Yep. So far what we've done is we brought a family member who just happened to be like in the right time of life. She didn't have a home that was hers that she had to pay for and stay home for. And she wasn't like away in college full time. So she came with us. We paid her. We covered her housing expense. We covered her food for the most part, unless she wanted certain things. And, that worked out really great because we trusted her and we were both able to work and take advantage of the increased income with a contract and the tax-free income with the contract. But now we are going to be transitioning to one of us working. So one of us is going to be I'm going to be the childcare.
Yeah. Megan loves being a stay-at-home mom. And so she definitely doesn't shy away from that role.
But, something that we could consider traveling as a family, and especially, we're getting ready to have our second child, then maybe hit the road after about 6 months. And we've talked about whether we're going to go far away or if we're going to try to stay closer to home for the first one. Usually we try to stay closer to home. And in that case, as long as for tax reasons, we're outside of a certain radius, we might be more comfortable with finding, formal childcare because we're in our state. Most likely we might have family that's in that other section of the state or friends in the other part of the state that could watch our child for us.
Or suggest someone that they send their kid to, like a childcare option.
Yeah. So it's just another example of how moldable travel therapy is. And sometimes that's stressful to people because they're like, there's so many options and so many choices, but it's really, you can work it to your advantage to do, whatever works for your family. So childcare. Yeah. Consider where you're going to go with that. The other one is schooling. So if you have kids that are school age, we don't have too much experience with that. We've discussed, do we want to do homeschool, online school, if we continue traveling once they're school age. But if you have kids who are school age, that's definitely something you want to look into. What's great is that they now have really awesome online curriculum. If you're looking to do the homeschool route, or maybe even if you have some high schoolers, there's schools just all online now due to the advancement of technology. And I think I've heard of some traveling full-time people, not necessarily in the therapy world or healthcare world, but to people who can talk with their school district and figure out something that will work for their child to be able to still be in the school district, but take things online. Say you want to take one contract a year over the summer, but it butts up, doesn't line up perfectly at the end of the school year or the beginning of the school year. You can talk with your school to try and figure out, what can work while we're out of town. Yeah, it definitely doesn't hurt to ask, and more options isn't a bad thing.
The other thing is extracurricular activities. So, what things are your kids into? You have school dances, sports. How can you fulfill that? And some things, you will go through, you'll consider, and you're like, okay, I can't fulfill this on the road. That's something you need to think about. A lot of it you can fulfill on the road. And then you figure out, okay, how can I get them back to their school so they can go to the school dance or they can go to prom or that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't have much experience in this yet, but we do have Reagan in like a little gym class while we're home. And I have thought like it'll be kind of sad when we have to leave home for her to stop that. But it's cool because we have roots to come back to now. There's like a whole class of kids that she's grown up with. So she'll be coming back to them when we're home. And then who's to say there's not a gym class on the road?
That's true.
Or like mountains and
or
like
mountains.
Rocks
Can
that
hang on
function
trees.
as a gym class.
All right. So this is just some of the logistics of travel. Not to be a Debbie Downer on the podcast here, but it can be overwhelming. But it doesn't have to be. It's just stuff you have to consider. Go slow through it. But we go through these logistics for a good reason, and that's because of the pros of travel therapy. And you can hear us talk about that all the time. We praise it all the time. But our main 3 pros, we would say, is flexibility of time that travel gives you, the ability to take long periods of time off. The other one is earning more money. It's great to earn more money. Not that money is everything about life, but money can give you some security and some flexibility with your time. And that's what we love. And then the last one is the adventure. So being able to go to national parks, go to different cities that you normally would not get to, or maybe you would only get to during your 2 weeks of vacation each year, but you get to go live near these places and visit multiple times while you're on a travel contract. And the memories you make on travel contract, those are priceless, especially if you get to bring your kids along.
And we definitely think that things seem scarier when you ignore them, don't know what to think about and address, or had just, choose not to think through it. So I think this is meant to just jog your mind, get it going, think about what is important to you and how to make it work in all of those different situations.
And if you're listening to this show and you're thinking of a few questions you would like to ask, really consider leaving those questions down in the comment section. If you're watching us here on YouTube, you never know. We'll be able to answer those on hopefully on the YouTube, but we might even be able to make a whole podcast out of it if we're getting a lot of the same question. Or feel free to send us a direct message or send us an email at ryanandmeganorear@gmail.com. We always try to help out as much as we can. If you want something that's a little bit more of a connection, we do offer some one-on-one mentorship. And what this is usually a video phone call with us. And so it's just a lot more of a connection. You get an hour of our time.
It's specific to your situation. We don't have all the time to do it, so we do charge a little bit for that one-on-one mentorship. But if you're really kind of ready to take that next step, it's a really great resource because you can ask all those little logistic questions to us pertaining to your situation. It's good to have somebody who's been doing it to bounce ideas off of and be your cheerleader because, everybody needs that in life. And usually when you're going for something that is unconventional and that brings up a lot of questions and that's harder than the norm, you don't have very many people cheering you on. Just because they have the same questions about it that you do.
Right. And usually you're talking about your typical support system. So like your family, your friends who usually are supporting you, most of them most likely have never done travel healthcare. Right. So they don't know how to support you. They're kind of wondering the questions too on the logistics. And so sometimes it's good to talk to other fellow travelers. So we'd love to be that for you if you would like. If not, I'm sure that you have some friends who are travel nurses, travel therapists out there. Yes. The other big thing and another good resource to look at is having a good, trusted recruiter. And so we always recommend people get a recruiter recommended to them from a traveler that they've had a good experience with that recruiter. Because the last thing you want to do is get a recruiter from a big company or from a website and and you know nothing about them. It's kind of like the lottery. You're not sure what you're going to get. But if you have a friend that travels and they have a recruiter they have taken contracts with and they like, ask for them, what's the name of that recruiter? And then, of course, we will always love to share our recruiters that we personally use and trust with you. I'll go ahead and put a link down below in the description where you can click on that, and it'll be a little form that you can fill out that gets sent to our email, or you can email us or direct message us, and we can get you connected with our personal recruiters if you need someone.
So let's go into a little bit of what we've been up to, what life is like. And basically, it's just a huge waiting period until we've got a second baby.
Mm-hmm. Big countdown.
Yeah, it's so weird to have like impending change that is going to happen, especially if you have a specific date that it's going to happen on, and to just be waiting around for it. So part of kind of how we've prepared for this, though, as travelers still taking contracts at home, is knowing that we wanted at least 2 weeks off for Ryan. So he was able to request that off at work and get it approved. It was part of a part of the contract.
My new contract.
Before he signed on the dotted line that he was going to still be working. He asked for those dates. They said it was okay. So we got those 2 weeks approved. And then we also have to save for 2 weeks because he's not going to be paid during that time. So
right. That's a big thing. As a traveler, when you take time off, that is unpaid time.
Yes.
So you're not making money for those 2 weeks. And so you have to financially think ahead of that logistic and start kind of tucking away some money so you don't get to those 2 weeks without a paycheck and feel like you're scrambling. That's always why we recommend also as a traveler having an emergency fund, a fully funded emergency fund. That looks different for everyone, but we typically recommend having 2 to 6 months of expenses in your emergency fund. So if you ever have some unexpected time off, a contract gets ended early, or you need to take 2 weeks off for a baby, you kind of have that to fall back on for that. That gives you a little more security in that constant change.
So we've been preparing for that. And now we're just excited.
Yeah. How do you feel about going from 1 kid to 2 kids?
I don't know. I feel at peace. A lot of people say they're not sure if they're going to love the second baby the same, or they don't want the love for their first baby to be cut in half or something. And I know what happened when we had Reagan. My heart grew, like the Grinch's heart grows. It literally grew. So and every mom says, don't worry, it's going to happen again. So I haven't been worrying about that. Haven't been worrying about really myself, just knowing that life is going to change for Reagan and wanting her to have joy in being a big sister and be able to be confident in our love for her, even when the second baby's here.
Right. Yeah. When we had Reagan, they always talk about how life changes so much once you have a kid. And that is true. But there's this life changed and it was cool. It was okay. It was wow, I don't even hardly recognize life after that.
More nervous for the second kid.
2 under 2 might be a challenge. So who knows, the next few podcasts, we might be singing a different song, but I think it's definitely going to be change. It's going to be a little bit shocking. And then we're going to be I don't even know what life was without 2 kids.
Yeah. Everyone says it's easier to go from 1 to 2 than 0 to 1. But like Brian was kind of alluding to, our transition from 0 to 1, at least for me, was just so exciting. We were just ready for it and excited that it was happening. So 1 to 2, we're ready for it and excited. But also I know the sleep deprivation and all the other aspects that we're about to jump into.
Yeah, we'll have to keep you guys updated. As for before we hop into our last segment of what's been good, what's been poopy, we do want to highlight kind of the central hub of all of our information. We have written articles. We have Travel Therapy Insider videos on our YouTube channel. We have social medias. We have a bunch of content out there on this lifestyle. And you can find all that on our website, ryanandmeganorear.com. So be sure to check that out if you're unsure where to go. That kind of is a central hub that you can then launch off from all the different things that we do. And so you can learn about this kind of travel, healthcare, lifestyle, and figure out, do you want to do that or do you not?
Yep.
So check out the website.
Yeah. So Ryan, are you ready for the question of the day?
Yes, I am.
What has been good?
All right. So what's been good, other than I'm about to have my second daughter, this past
You better
weekend,
be saving that money, brother.
if you follow our Instagram, actually, I don't know. Most people might not know, but I play competitive wiffle ball. And I've played competitive wiffle ball in tournaments.
Anybody who sees it, they're like, "You're a pro wiffle ball player."
I've played since I was like 15. I've played when I was younger, but like in competitive tournaments since I was like 15. And most of them have been kind of a slower pitch variety back in my hometown. But when we moved to St. Louis, this is my second summer of playing a fast pitch competitive league. And it's pretty legit.
It is.
And so that just came to an end of our postseason run with the MoWiff Mambas. It came to an end, but then what was great this past weekend is our league hosted a tournament where you could kind of put together teams and play. And so I got to bring up 3 of my best friends from my hometown that I've played wiffle ball with for a very long time. And they got to kind of experience some of the fast pitch league. And so it was just a great time to get the boys back together, play a game we love, even if it's a plastic ball and bat. And it seems ridiculous because you got grown men out there trying their hardest, but it was just such a fun time. And that's the stuff you got to say yes to really enjoy life.
Think you're going to do the MoWiff Mambas again?
I don't know. I hit free agency this year, so there'll be some MoWiff teams out there looking to sign me, which is kind of part of the fun.
Yeah. And that's part of the change. You don't really know if you're going to be here.
That's true.
That might be a really important consideration. We might not be able to leave town. All right. What's poopy?
So what's been poopy? And I've been sitting on this one for a while.
I think sitting on what's been poopy.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound...
Well, now I'm releasing it.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so what's been poopy? I am working a travel healthcare contract right now in our tax home. So I was on the road. It was about lunchtime, and I was like, I'm pretty hungry. I'm going to go into Subway to get a bite to eat.
I don't think I've heard this.
I know you haven't. I've been sitting on it.
Oh, wow.
So I went into Subway, and I chose Subway because Megan was so kind enough to give me coupons.
Yes.
We're not typically
some good coupons out there.
We're not typically couponers, but she gave me a list of coupons.
Okay, you're saying coupon. Is it coupon or coupon?
I say coupon. I don't know. Let us know in the comments. But anyway, so I bring it up there, and I could get like a 6-inch sub with a drink and chips for like $5, which is a pretty good deal because otherwise you spend like 15.
The Subway didn't take your coupon?
The Subway did not take my coupon. I was like, why, Subway, do you release coupons that a place does not take?
Most of the time I do see signs in any Subway I stop at that says, we don't take coupons at this location.
None of them in our area take the coupons. So why does the newspaper keep sending them out? I don't understand
that
it,
is pretty
Subway.
poopy.
I don't understand. It was very poopy. The cashier lady, you could tell she gets this a lot. She was like, I'm so sorry. I'll give you the one discount I can give. It was like 50 cents off. It wasn't much. I can't do much with 50 cents, but it was the thought that counted. And I was just like, well, here's my useless coupon. Can you throw it away?
Wow.
So that was kind of poopy.
Well, I guess I can't give you any of the new Subway coupons I got.
I know. I'm going to keep trying. I still have the other ones. Okay, Megan.
Oh, man.
Let's start with what's been poopy for you.
Oh,
we'll end on a good note.
I was prepared for this one. What's been poopy? I would just say that I'm extremely done being pregnant. Nothing else really
hit your time limit
going on. Like, life is really, really good. I'm really blessed. I'm really thankful. But still being pregnant, I'm just, so close to the finish line. I can see it, and I'm like crawling to it is how it feels. So
rolling.
Not even crawling, just rolling. Being pushed.
Good. Okay, then what's been good?
What's great is that our brand new refrigerator finally got delivered to the house. We have had this refrigerator bought and paid for like 2.5 months. And we were told it would be delivered in 2 weeks from our purchase date. And then it just all fell apart. So we've been waiting on that for a long, long time. And it's finally here. And I feel like my kitchen is complete. It's one of those like French door opening ones. Our other one was freezer on top, fridge on bottom.
Standard.
And being pregnant and having a toddler who comes up to the refrigerator every time you open it, and then like having to bend down and see what you got in your fridge just wasn't going good with me anymore. So
yeah, our ice maker didn't work.
Yep.
And so
So
the new fridge is really
now
nice.
we have an ice maker. We got filtered water. We've got a fridge up top with those French doors, and I'm really enjoying it.
Good. Right in time for the baby.
Yes.
That's good stuff. All right. Well, that ends our episode 2 of the Ryan and Megan podcast. Thank you all for joining along. Again, leave us a review, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. And until next time, see ya.